Hey there everyone, I'm Jeff. This is Tabletop Toolbox, and that's right, I'm here with the second episode of the Weekly Ratchet. Now, if you're not familiar with the concept of the show, go and check out the first episode here on the channel. Get yourself up to speed. But in the meantime, in this episode, we're going to talk about big games. We're going to talk about some small games. Might we even talk about the big game? I don't know. You don't know. So stick around to find out here on the Weekly Ratchet. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to last week's episode. I hope you all had a great week and a good weekend. Let me kick it off with some new games here in the library, and there isn't nearly as much to go through this week, so I might go into just a little bit more detail on these games. The first one is a backbreaker. This is ISS Vanguard by Awaken Realms. This is a cooperative campaign-based space game. You're playing through a whole bunch of different scenarios. You've got a ship that you are kind of upgrading throughout the game. Now, I have the base copy of this. I got it from a store down in South Carolina. I paid way too much for it. This is just part of the Dreadnought pledge. I have some other boxes back at the other house. Yeah, I enjoyed the game. I love space games. I think you all know that by now. I've also been playing Starfield on the Xbox by Bethesda, huge space-based sort of an RPG game. And so I've been interested in sort of following that same sort of adventure in board game form. So I picked this up. I got this secondhand off of eBay. I've got to rearrange the base game. They did take everything out of the Starship notebook, but they did not put the components back into the secret envelope. So I've got a website which gives you instructions on resetting the game. I'm going to have my wife do that for me so that I can, play through the game, probably solo without any spoilers. Anyways, that's ISS Vanguard. Let me try not to split my back putting this off frame. The other game I got is a complete opposite of that. This is a much smaller game. Look at this. Haha, so easy. This is Zombie Kittens. Now, this is in the Exploding Kittens universe, and if you perhaps saw, my daughter and I did a review of Exploding Kittens on the Dice Tower channel last year, and we love this game. This game, the entire Exploding Kittens line of games, gets an awful lot of crap from the gaming community, and frankly, I don't know why. It is a very, very fun game. Yes, it is a random, silly card game, but what's wrong with that? So many card games are random, silly card games. Yahtzee is a random, silly dice game. And those games are really, really popular. And not only that, but they have paved the way for a lot of other games that sort of follow their style, right? We play Exploding Kittens a lot at like pubs and such that we go to. We played actually last weekend at the cabin with my brother. I forgot to mention that in last week's lineup. And my daughter really loves this game. She loves getting to play this. The one problem with the game has always been that player elimination aspect, and Zombie Kittens actually fixes that, in that even when you die from an exploding kitten, you get to stay in the game. You get to play some certain cards. People may be forced to feed you cards, and someone may be forced at some point to reanimate you. Now, I'm not a big zombie person. I don't do zombie movies. I don't do zombie video games or board games, and so I've always stayed away from this. But when I found out about that aspect, I thought, oh, well, certainly we need to get it then. The rules look really neat. There's a bunch of new cards in this, and I am really excited to check this one out. I really enjoy Exploding Kittens. If you haven't played it, it's certainly not, a deep strategic game. It is a very tactical game, and there are some interesting decisions to make. There are good and bad ways to play through your cards. So I would recommend checking it out if you haven't had a chance. Exploding Kittens, Zombie Kittens, and by the way, the best expansion is the Streaking Kittens. That one has definitely created some really, really fun and hilarious moments for my family. Anyways, those are the games I picked up this week. All right, let's delve into some crowdfunding projects. Now, no one asked last week about any feedback on any crowdfunding projects, and that's fine, but if you're interested and would like to know more about some projects, maybe trying to understand what a particular game does or how it might work, let me know, and I'll see if I can dig into it a little bit. But I did some research coming into this video. There's a couple of games that I've noticed. There's actually one that I backed immediately after reading about it, and this is Snowfall Over Mountains. Now, this is by Pencil First Games, and immediately when I saw it, it reminded me of Sunset Over Water, I believe it's called, which was a really little card game. I had it. I actually traded away in that math trade I talked about last week. because I found it just very one-dimensional, kind of boring, and I was especially disappointed that while the art is very pretty, it gets recycled a lot on a lot of different cards. You see a lot of the same art over and over again. This game, however, is a tile-laying game. It is apparently a solo-only game, and you are exploring a snow-covered mountaintop or field, whatever, around your cabin. And if you saw last week's episode, you know a little bit about me and cabins. And I immediately thought, oh, this is a game I need to pick up. Even if I don't like it, I will just leave it out at our Airbnb log cabin out in Shenandoah for people to maybe check out and explore themselves. So I backed that immediately. Also, I saw that Earthborn Rangers is making another pass through crowdfunding. I don't really know a lot about this game. It certainly looks neat, and I like just the title of it alone. Do you know anything about Earthborn Rangers? Maybe you can let me know about it. I also checked out Triumph. This is a Roman-themed game. Now, the box art on this one is a little off-putting. I don't know. That cover just looks a little weird to me. It's also by Phalanx, and I've had some iffy experience with Phalanx, especially during Kickstarter campaigns. One particular member, I don't know if he was a designer or one of the publishers, whatever, he really kind of rubbed people the wrong way back during the U-Boot campaign, and so I've kind of avoided them ever since. But I do love Roman-themed games for some reason. Actually, I know why. It's the Caesar 3, Caesar 4 video game. Really got me into that Roman theme back in the late 90s. Yeah, I'm that old. Anyways, so kind of curious about that one, but not backing either of those. There's also a new expansion for Tokyo Highway. Now, I've only played this game once. I played it with some good friends, and I really had a great time with it. I now have a copy that I bought secondhand here in the local Richmond area. But I haven't even played it. My daughter's really interested in checking it out. I probably really should break it off the shelf. There's no reason why we haven't played it yet. But this is a new expansion that adds some neat little elements that you can play with. You've got a airport I saw. There's like a stadium that you can build a highway to, a rainbow that you can drive under, and some little upgrades that are supposed to make the game a little easier in that dexterity element. Some little rubber pads that you can put underneath the vehicles, underneath the roads to make them stick a little better, which might even make the game too easy. But I do know some folks who struggle with the dexterity element of games like this because, they may have a little shake in their hand or something like that. And so I think that element can make those games more approachable for folks like that. And I think that's great. So I'm debating backing the Tokyo Highway expansion. Anyways, those are just a few Kickstarters that jumped out to me. Are there any projects that you're checking out? Let me know in the comments. All right, it's time for Question of the Week. And first, I'm going to review the question that I asked last week, which was, I'm going to ask you what your thoughts are on the new Wormspan game. This question did get some feedback on that video, so if you left a comment, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Let me read through some of them now. Mark B said that he probably wouldn't add it to his collection after too many plays of Wingspan, and he suggested that it might be a cash grab, but it's still good for the hobby to have some variety of themes. Good point. I appreciate that one. CR Poll suggested, hang on a second. Let's see here real quick. This is, that's going to be better. Yeah, buddy, I'm trolling you. Anyways, CR Poll said, what's wrong with a cash grab, and asked if games like Frosthaven received the same types of criticisms. Now, let me qualify that comment just a little bit. I think the idea of a cash grab is that a publisher might take a title that's already established and just kind of throw some fresh paint on it and stick it out as a new game. And those are usually looked at as a very cheap way to gain some more revenue. And I think that can be harmful, or at least maybe harmful is not the right word, but it's kind of a little sleazy looking, when you're just trying to, let me see if I can make some more money off of Wingspan by making it look like a different game. Now, I'm not necessarily suggesting that that's the idea here, that that's what Stonemaier has done, but it definitely can come across with that kind of an impression. I do agree that, maybe having a different theme on a popular game system can, appeal to a wider audience, and that can be a good thing. So anyways, that's how I came up with the cash grab aspect of that question. Anyways, last was Simulation Chris, who said that he thinks the game is too similar to Wingspan and yet seems less thematic. And I do kind of agree with that. I was thinking about that comment because the Wingspan theme of sort of collecting birds is even a little weird. It's almost like you're kind of throwing them in cages. And the idea behind Wormspan, from what I understand in the review that I watched, was that you're just sort of finding dragons and stuffing them in caves, or maybe exploring the cave to actually see which dragon is in it. I'm not really sure. But when you think about all of the fantasy fiction around dragons, right, and some of the grand and epic stories that dragons are usually a part of, although most of them may result in that dragon being murdered. But anyways, none of that is present in Wormspan. There's no adventure that these dragons take. There's no point to having the dragons. They're just dragons you're finding in caves, and you're getting points, and then there's eggs. I don't know. It is a little strange. For me personally, I agree with a lot of these comments. I think that it's too samey to Wingspan, and I don't really care for Wingspan. I've played it a few times. I didn't really appreciate the go fish element of trying to find the cards that then may work with the current scoring system that you have in place. I also, as much as I love engine building games, and Wingspan is a decent engine builder, but if you've got an engine that you fire off that lets you get a bunch of food items and then drawing a bunch of cards, and then you end up with a bunch of cards that don't work with the food that you have, or cards that work with each other, or cards that work with, like I said, the scoring system or the engine you already have in place, then you've completely wasted that turn. You've acquired all this stuff, and you can't do anything with it. And those turns really just felt depressing. You know, you felt like you did all that work for nothing. And in the Wormspan specific, the one aspect of the game that I'm a little put off by is that the cave cards look really neat. The art on these cave cards, from what I've seen, the cave cards are really pretty. And then you cover them with these dragon cards that are the same size, and the dragon cards have much less art on them. It's simply a picture of a dragon in the middle surrounded by a white frame on the card. And so I kind of feel like at certain points of the game, you're going to have a really colorful and pretty player board. By the end of the game, you might just have a bunch of sterile white-looking cards, and you've covered up what I think are some of the more artistic elements of the game. Anyways, that's my thoughts on Wormspan. Here's the question for this week. What do you think about the Board Game Geek scoring system? And specifically, have you ever scored a game? And if you have, what's your mindset in how you apply a score to a game? And the reason I'm asking this is I've gotten a number of games that I then look up on Board Game Geek to kind of get an idea of what is the consensus of this game. What do other people think about this game? And most of them have been Kickstarter games, either going to Kickstarter or fresh off of Kickstarter, and those are usually games that have been sent to me from the Dice Tower to review because, you know, they're just not going to get to them. And in some of those instances, I've seen two things. I've seen games that have a 9 on them, or, you know, a really high score. Oh, this might be a really great game. And then you go and you look at it. Well, it's only gotten, 15 scores, and a bunch of them are 9s, and you start clicking on those 9s, and you realize that those people have only reviewed one game, and it's that one. And you think, really, of all the thousands and thousands of titles out on Board Game Geek, this is the only one that you've bothered to score, and it got a 9 for being a great game? Seems a little fishy, right? I've also seen, and this is a particular story, in that I saw a game that had a 1. I don't remember what the game was, but it had a really, really low score. And I went and clicked on it, and someone gave it a 1, and they said, probably won't play. And I thought, that's an odd comment. And so, being a little curious, a little investigative, if you will, I went to their profile, and I saw that they had scored thousands of games, something like 5 digits of games that they have scored. And I was going through a lot of their scores, and a lot of them seemed to openly imply that they had never played the game. And being even more curious, I sent them a message. And I said, hey, I noticed this. I thought it was odd. Can you just walk me through what you think about when you score these games? And they responded, and they said that they're using it as almost like a wish list, that they're saying, well, if it's a 1, I'm not going to want to play it. I've looked into it, and I don't think it's a game I'm going to have any interest in. It's going to be a terrible game to play. But if it's a 10, then that's a game I really hope I can get to play. And then that way, later on, if I'm at a convention or a game night, and I see a game being offered to play, and I can real quick check sort of my wish list on BGG to determine if it's something that I'd like to play. Now, I didn't respond to them to tell them how just crazy that idea was, that the scoring system clearly states on Board Game Geek that you're scoring these games because you really like them or you really don't like them, and how often are you going to want to play those games again? I didn't respond to that, but it definitely got me thinking about how people may have different impressions of what the scoring system on Board Game Geek may mean. Anyways, I'm getting a little bit long-winded here. So I'm curious, again, what do you think about the Board Game Geek scoring system? Not, do you think it's useful to you, when you go to look at a score? That's a whole different topic. I'm also not going to get into the whole, false scores, the battle between Gloomhaven and Brass Birmingham as they duked it out for number one, and people were throwing artificial 1s and 10s on either title because they thought it should or shouldn't be the number one game. That's clearly ridiculous, and those people should get launched off into space. But anyways, if you've ever scored a game, what are your thoughts behind it? How do you sort of come up with that system, if you ever even have? That's the question for the week. All right, last up is games I've recently played. And since I think I'm doing pretty good on the timing of this video, I'm going to go into these just a little bit more in detail. As I mentioned last week, I did get to play Skymines. This is an Alexander Pfister game. And in this game, you are trying to sort of build up these 4 businesses. You've got 4 businesses one on each side of the board, and they've got a mining operation set up in Venus? Is it Venus? Is it the moon? I don't even remember. But you're trying to get these little tokens out on the board to help them expand their mining operations. And as you do so, their stock value will increase with these little coins on the board that become uncovered as these tokens go out on the main board. You're also then trying to buy stock in that company. You can do that by spending some resources to go up these tracks. You can also acquire cards that you are also playing in the game. I'll get to that in a moment, but some of these cards may also represent stocks in those companies. And so then at the end of the game, it's the number of shares that you own multiplied by the value of each company, and that's how much money you get, and helps you win the game. And all of that is fine. It's great. Works, makes a lot of sense, pretty simple to do. There's some other elements to it, but that's pretty much where the bulk of your points will come from in the game. The way that you're doing all of this, though, is that you're playing these cards to your player board. You've got columns under your board for anywhere from 3 to 5 cards. You can eventually unlock these additional columns. And then at the end of the round, after you've done everything that you can do and you pass, those cards move to the top of your board, and they have to go into 3 or 5 different stacks depending on how many cards you played. You can rearrange them, but they have to go separately in each stack. And before you do that, you will choose one stack of cards you already have there, remove it, add it to any cards you may have left over from previous rounds, and that is what you get to use in the next round of the game. And that element sucked. I hated it. I could not seem to get things sorted out. I couldn't get the cards in the right places so I could have the right stuff I needed for the next turn. There's this additional track on your player board, and without going into too much detail, as I don't intend this to be a full teach, but you can spend an action to try and go as far up that track as you can in a single move, but there's no track there at the beginning of the game. You have to actually add these tech tiles, these little tokens, and all you have to do is meet the requirements of that token. You don't have to actually spend anything, but when you take the action, you can zip as far up that track as you can if you have all the right stuff sitting in front of you. And I could never get the right stuff sitting in front of me. I took the action one time. I thought that I'd have more opportunities to take this action, and as a result, I didn't get that far up it. I didn't get that many in-game points, and I kind of got slaughtered in this game. And here's the thing, some of the elements of this game I like. I'm not super crazy about stock markets or tracks, but it's fine. I'm not against it. It's just not my favorite mechanism. And there's a little bit of a deck building element to it, kind of. But this whole managing your hand and managing where these cards go and being constantly limited by just the cards that you have available to you is one of my least favorite mechanisms in any game. I want the puzzle of the game to be on the table. I want it to be, what are my most efficient actions? Where can I get the most points from? What's the right thing to get involved in right now? Where is, the strategy on the board? I don't want my entire challenge to be, well, what cards do I have and where do I put them and what am I going to pick up? I hated that. Just hated it. And I tell you, I've played a good number of Pfister games. I've never liked any of them whatsoever. I feel like his games are complicated for the sake of complication, and as a result, they become very non-thematic. Nothing on that game was about the stock market. All the challenge of that game was just the fiddliness of these stupid cards, and it's no fun. It's no fun at all. I want to be able to math out the proper strategies in that market, not just math out what cards am I going to be able to use in my next round, and I hated it. So that was Skymines. Glad I got to check it off the list. the game I know I don't have to ever worry about playing again. I mentioned last week I was going to try and play Clank in Space. I didn't have a chance to learn the rules to that ahead of time, so we did not play that. Instead, we played Evacuation again. I mentioned this game last week. I'm still really enjoying this game. Quite opposite of Skymines, like I just mentioned. On your turn, you can take any of the actions available to you in the game. All those actions are available. You can pick which one you want to take. You've got some cards if you're playing on the more advanced mode, which we do, which may give you some extra actions you can take, but there's maybe some trade-off later on in the round. You may not be able to have as much progression on these tracks, and so you've got to work that balance. I really like that element of it. I'm still not good at this game. I picked up an extra 2 points. I went from 59 points my previous play to 61 points. I broke that 60-point barrier, which the rulebook suggests in the solo mode is kind of like a good score, but you should be able to get to 80, and I'm nowhere near getting to 80. So I'm going to probably jump out on Board Game Geek and try and learn some strategy, try to figure out maybe where I'm not progressing early enough in the game to then set my engine up to be more successful later in the game. But I'm loving Evacuation. I wish the component quality was better. The starships look amazing, but the cards themselves are kind of lackluster, and the components just don't have a lot of pop to them. But I'm sure that just like Underwater Cities, there'll be a lot of options for this game later on. That was Evacuation. I also got to play this one. I'm going to bring this out here in the screen. And this is a shout out to Tracy from Board Game Revolution. I made a post on BGR. I was asking for small footprint games that have some of the more advanced elements like engine building, maybe deck building, something like that, where you don't need a whole ton of space on the table, but you still have a nice meaty chunky game to sink your teeth into. My wife and I love going to breweries, and we'll sit there and play some games. We took this to a brewery here in town called Center of the Universe. There's a whole thing about Ashland and the center of the universe, which is pretty cool. My daughter went to go play some arcade games, and we sat there and played The Builder's Antiquity. This is by Bombix. Never heard of them. The designer is Henry Henry, I'm going to guess, with art by Sabrina Miramun. This is a really neat little card playing game. You've got these builder cards that these buildings you're trying to build by assigning workers to those buildings to provide the various resources. You have to pay for each worker that you play, unless you have a prisoner, which you can purchase a prisoner. And there's maybe some shady theme to this, but you get penalized if by the end of the game you have not freed those prisoners. So there's that's a decent element. You can then free those prisoners, and you can give them tools. You can train some of your workers to give more resource output throughout the game. This reminded me a lot of Project L. If you've ever heard of Project L, it's a puzzle game, kind of like these Tetris pieces. You're filling in these puzzles, but you get 3 actions per turn in both of these games. And again, it's a matter of, okay, well, sometimes you're just taking the card, but then you've also got to, fulfill the obligations of the card. And so you've got this interesting push and pull between just acquiring the things that you need and then fulfilling those needs, all in just 3 actions per turn. This has the added element of the money. So you're trying to manage your money throughout this game. Buildings that you complete may give you money. You can also just grab some money. You can also take a single action to get a loan to get a whole bunch of money, but then you got to pay that back before the end of the game or lose points. I really enjoy this. It doesn't have quite the small footprint I was looking forward to. The cards are almost the size of this tin, and you got to lay out 5 of them plus a draw deck, so it actually ended up taking up a decent amount of space. But I had a lot of fun playing this. We really enjoyed it. A fairly quick game. I think we played it in about 25, 30 minutes, maybe even with the teach. Good game. The Builder's Antiquity. We also played, let me reach off a frame here for a second. That night we came home and we played Ancient Knowledge. I'm borrowing this from my friend Daniel. This is by Yellow. The designer is Remy Mathieu. Listen, names and me, we don't get along. Anyways, this is an engine building game with a really interesting timing element. Daniel brought this over. We played it a few weeks ago, and I really, at first, I was getting my butt kicked, but then I started to figure it out, and I actually did win that game. In this game, you've got a central board you can put a couple cards on, and they'll give you some engine building elements. But then you also have a timeline of cards at the top of the board. They're monuments that you're playing out. And at the end of each one of your turns, all those monuments shift to the left. your artifact cards in the middle of the board stay in place for the rest, for most of the game. Although all of this is wildly subject to change just by what all the cards in this game do. And as those cards slide off your timeline, they're lost to the past. That's the idea, is that this is, knowledge is sort of falling away from your civilization, and you're trying to learn from these monuments what you can. You have these little tiny knowledge tokens that you put on each monument as they come out, and you're trying to get them off. You're trying to learn from that monument, absorb that knowledge before it falls off the timeline, because then any knowledge left on them becomes lost or broken knowledge, and that's negative points at the end of the game. Really, really neat system. There's a lot of different card combos out here. There's also these like knowledge cards that you can acquire, and some of them are worth end game points, but some of them will give you immediate effects if you have the right things in place, and they can really help you throughout the game. I'm really enjoying this. And what I also really like about it is that you really don't know how you're doing until the end of the game. So in my first game of this against Daniel, I felt like I was getting clobbered, and I won with a decent margin. When I played with my wife over the weekend, or about Friday of last week, I thought I was doing really, really well. I thought I had a really strong engine in place. I thought I was just racking up points, but she was triggering the end game quicker than I thought she would. So I was kind of just making sure I had some last minute things in place. And then I lost by 4 points, and it was just very surprising. I thought I was doing very well, and she ended up doing much better, which I thought was really cool because she didn't think she had it at all. And then to suddenly, hey, yeah, you actually won this game. And she was really proud of herself, which was, again, really, really cool. I like games where you don't necessarily feel like you've got this point tracker that's just looming over you and, oh my gosh, you're beating me by 10 points. What am I going to do? How am I going to make this up? In this game, you're able to just focus on what you're doing, focus on your engine. Yeah, you might have some concept of what your opponent is doing, but for a game that tight, it was 26 to 30 points at the end. You really just don't know, and I like that overall. I kind of like that surprise at the end, and you don't, like I said, you don't feel like the game is just weighing on you the whole time. So that was Ancient Knowledge. Now, over the weekend, there was this thing on TV, the Super Bowl, or I don't know, whatever. I don't really do sports, but we had some friends over. Actually, Daniel and his wife Denise came over, and we played the big game. We played our own big game. We played a 4-player game of Crokinole. I have a Crokinole board I bought a couple of years ago for my family, and we kind of hodgepodge together a 4-player game of Crokinole. That was a lot of fun. My wife is really good at that game. She teamed up with Daniel, and they clobbered Denise and I in a 4-player game. As teams, obviously. And then we played Clask. My daughter loves Clask. We haven't broken this one out in a while. I brought this one over to the house as well, and just had a bunch of little 2-player games of this going on over time. My daughter kicked my butt in Clask. A very, very fun game. And that was really about it for the past week. Didn't get a whole lot of gaming in. For the next week, of this week, I should say, I'm really hoping to be able to play Clank in Space. And I don't know what we're going to get into beyond that. I'm also going to try and check out a little bit more of this ISS Vanguard content sitting here. And we'll see what else comes up. Hey folks, that was the Weekly Ratchet here on Tabletop Toolbox. Thank you for tuning in. I'm looking forward to some of your comments and feedback. Let me know if any of the games I've mentioned you'd like to know more about. Let me know about any Kickstarters you might want to check out and get some more information on. And make sure you check out that question of the week. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you next time. Cheers.